Salesforce just led a $135 million investment into a startup whose entire pitch is that companies like Salesforce charge too much for software that does too little. And the man running that startup is a billionaire who hasn't held a full-time operating job since he left Facebook, 15 years ago. His name is Chamath Palihapitiya. You might know him as the SPAC King, or as one of the hosts of the All In podcast. In late June 2026, he announced two things at once. His company 8090 closed a Series A led by Salesforce Ventures, and he was stepping in as CEO himself. Not chairman. Not advisor. Chief executive, running daily operations, for the first time since 2011. Now here's the question that should bother you. Enterprise software is roughly $1 trillion a year market, according to industry estimates. Why would one of its biggest incumbents write a check to the company promising to burn the whole pricing model down? By the end of this video, you'll see why that answer isn't crazy. It might be the most rational move Salesforce could make. But first, you need to understand what 8090 actually builds. Chamath Palihapitiya is one of the most polarizing figures in tech. He joined Facebook in 2007 and ran the growth team that helped take the platform from tens of millions of users to the biggest social network on Earth. He left in 2011, started the venture fund Social Capital, and became famous, then infamous, during the SPAC boom of 2020 and 2021, when he took a string of companies public through blank check mergers. Some of those bets collapsed, and critics never let him forget it. So when a guy with that track record says he's going back to operating full-time, people pay attention, some with excitement, some sharpening their knives. He founded 8090 quietly in January 2024. For 2 years, the company barely made noise. No hype cycle, no viral demos. Then in June 2026, it surfaced with a $135 million Series A and a cap table that reads like a podcast guest list: Jeffrey Katzenberg's WNDR Co., David Sachs Craft Ventures, fellow All-In hosts David Friedberg and Jason Calacanis, plus angels like Palo Alto Networks CEO Nikesh Arora and Quora's Adam D'Angelo. Chamatha's framing for all of it was one line: AI can be the grand equalizer. To understand why 8090 exists, you have to understand the deal every large company makes with its software vendors. A big enterprise might pay millions per year for a CRM, an ERP, an HR system, and study after study suggests most employees use only a fraction of the features they're paying for. The pricing model makes it worse. Most SaaS is priced per seat, per month, forever. Costs scale with headcount, not with value. And switching is so painful, data migrations, retraining, broken integrations, that vendors can raise prices year after year knowing customers will grumble and renew anyway. That lock-in is exactly why SaaS became the best business model of the last 20 years, with gross margins often north of 70%. The name 8090 is a shot aimed directly at that model. It reportedly stands for delivering roughly 80% of the functionality of traditional enterprise software at about 90% less cost. The bet is simple: most companies don't need the 20% of exotic features they never touch. They need the core, and if AI can build that core custom, cheaply, and fast, the per-seat subscription starts looking like a tax from another era. So how do you actually deliver that? That's where the software factory comes in. 8090's product is called Software Factory, and the positioning is deliberate. This is not another AI coding assistant that auto-completes your functions, and it's not consumer vibe coding, where you type a prompt and get a fragile prototype that falls apart in production. Software Factory is built for teams of human engineers and AI agents working together to build and modify enterprise-grade software, with the boring, unglamorous things large companies actually require: audit trails, access controls, review processes, accountability for every change. That word, production quality, is the entire pitch. Because here's the dirty secret of the AI coding boom: generating code has become almost free, but generating code that a bank, an insurer, or a hospital can legally run is still brutally hard. The gap between a demo and a deployable system is where most AI coding startups quietly die. 8090 is betting that whoever closes that gap first doesn't just win a developer tools market, they win a piece of the replacement market for enterprise software itself. Instead of renting a bloated system built for everyone, a company could have software shaped exactly to its own workflows, built in weeks, and owned outright. If that sounds threatening to the SaaS industry, it should. Which brings us back to the paradox. So why did Salesforce Ventures lead this round? On the surface, it looks like a turkey investing in Thanksgiving. But look closer and the logic gets sharper. First, corporate venture arms exist partly as radar. If AI-built custom software really is coming for the seat-based subscription model, Salesforce would rather have a front-row seat, board visibility, information rights, early partnership options, than read about it later. Second, Salesforce itself has been pushing hard into AI agents, and its leadership has publicly embraced the idea that AI is transforming how work gets done inside companies. Backing 80/90 is a hedge. If the disruption happens, they own a slice of the disruptor. Third, there's a more cynical read: the amounts involved are small for a company of Salesforce's size. $135 million, of which Salesforce Ventures contributed only a portion, is roughly a rounding error next to the revenue of the SaaS giants. Cheap insurance. History says incumbents rarely fund their true killers, but it also says the smartest ones buy optionality early. Whichever read is right, the signal to the rest of the market is loud. Even the companies with the most to lose think this model is worth taking seriously. Zoom out, and 8090 is riding one of the strangest markets tech has ever seen. In the first half of 2026, startups in the US and Canada raised an estimated $392 billion, a record, with the overwhelming majority tied to AI. And the revenue side is accelerating just as fast. Mercer reported crossing $2 billion in annualized revenue just 4 months after hitting $1 billion. Sierra reportedly added its second $100 million in ARR in 2 quarters after the first took 7. AI companies aren't just growing, the time between milestones keeps shrinking. In that environment, investors are no longer paying for demos. They're paying for control of real workflows, payroll, compliance, customer service, and now the software development process itself. But keep your skepticism handy. Chamath has sold big visions before, and some of his SPAC-era bets cost retail investors dearly. Enterprise software has also buried plenty of confident challengers. Companies don't rip out systems their auditors, regulators, and 10,000 employees depend on just because something cheaper exists. The 80% that 8090 promises to deliver is doable. It's the last 20%, the compliance edge cases, the integrations, the trust, that has protected the incumbents for decades. So here's the answer to the question from the start. Salesforce funding 8090 isn't an accident and it isn't charity, it's an admission. An admission that the economics of software are shifting under everyone's feet, and that when the cost of building software collapses, the value migrates from whoever rents the software to whoever controls the workflow and the trust layer around it. If 8090 wins, the losers aren't just SaaS vendors, it's the entire pricing logic of per-seat subscriptions. The winners would be the millions of mid-sized businesses that could finally afford software shaped to how they actually work. And if 8090 loses, it will most likely be for the oldest reason in enterprise tech: trust takes decades to earn and 1 outage to lose. Either way, watch 2 numbers over the next year: how many production deployments 8090 can publicly name, and whether any major SaaS vendor cuts prices in response. Those 2 signals will tell you whether this was a revolution or just a very well-funded podcast storyline. We track the money behind stories like this one every week: the business models, the margins, and the numbers companies would rather you not check. If that's the kind of breakdown you want in your feed, subscribe so you don't miss the next one.